to start
Oh,
it just for my sake.
okay. Now I
Okay.
think it's officially recording.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, well, I will go ahead and get started, but before I do that, I'm just curious. I will introduce myself momentarily, but I'm curious of those that are on the call, are you all also CASA volunteers?
Yes, I am.
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes,
I am.
yes.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yes,
Well,
yeah.
you may have read the brief bio that I wrote, but my name is Anna Grace. I work at the Tennessee Justice Center as an anti-hunger policy coordinator, but I am also a CASA volunteer. I did my training this past spring, and so I just finished and have been assigned my first case. So I'm very new to it all, but hopefully this will be information that you all find useful and find that overlaps somewhat with our work as CASA volunteers. So, all right. Okay. Can you all come on? It's thinking about it.
We can see it.
Okay.
We can see your screen. We can see your
Okay,
screen.
perfect. I was trying to make it big.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, welcome to the presentation about TJC and the work that we do. Like I mentioned, my name's Anna Grace. I've been at TJC for about a year and 8 months. My background is in social work and Spanish. And so I started at TJC after I finished my MSW at University of Texas at Austin. So hook 'em. But anyways, I work specifically with the federal nutrition safety net programs. When I started at TJC, I worked most extensively with the WIC program for women, infants, and children, and have since transitioned to do some other child nutrition programs as well, like summer EBT, which we may get into if we have time. But anyways, we will go ahead and get started. Briefly, I'm just gonna touch on what exactly TJC does and how our anti-hunger work works and how we could potentially be a resource to some of the clients that you all serve through CASA. And then we'll dive into WIC, SNAP, and TennCare and how eligibility for those programs works specifically for foster families. Maybe, hopefully, some of you on the call have heard of TJC before, but if you haven't, we're a public interest law firm located in Nashville, Tennessee, but we work across the state. We have been in existence for about 28 years. Originally, we were born out of some legislation that was passed that prevented legal aid from filing class action lawsuits. They could no longer do advocacy or litigation. They could just serve individual clients. But what we realized is that oftentimes when there is an issue that an individual is experiencing over and over again, it's a systemic issue that needs to be addressed. And ultimately, you may be wasting time if you continue to address the individual issues rather than the system. And so since legal aid could no longer do that, TJC was born. And so we work directly with individuals who are having trouble accessing programs like Medicaid, SNAP, and WIC. And according to what we learn from them, we do advocacy for the programs across the state. So to break it down simply, we do direct service with these programs right here. If you know, or if you yourself or know a family that's struggling getting connected to SNAP, WIC, and TennCare, those are the programs that we help with most extensively. We have a team of caseworkers that will take on those cases and make sure that if families are eligible for the benefits of these programs, that they can actually receive them. And then I should have deleted summer EBT off here because it's a program that Tennessee opted into last summer, but not this summer. And so we're doing advocacy around it, but it's not actually a program we can help with because the state doesn't have it. So if you hear of families that are running into problems with these or have questions about their eligibility, you're more than welcome to point them to our website to give us a call. You can also fill out this inquiry form if they don't want to call, or you could fill it out on their behalf and let us know what they need help with and their contact information, and we can get in touch with them. So specifically on the anti-hunger team, our team was born like 10-ish years ago. Originally, TJC was just working around Medicaid. And so the anti-hunger advocacy is all around the nutrition safety net programs. So that includes SNAP, WIC. We run a Healthy School Meals for All campaign, trying to increase school meals access for more than just students that qualify based on their income. Like I mentioned, we're doing advocacy around summer EBT. And so anyways, all of the nutrition safety net programs. But we work individually with families, and then based on what we learn, we do administrative advocacy. We talk to partners about these programs like I'm doing right now, to provide education and policy expertise. So ultimately, we're increasing awareness and access to the safety net programs across the state. So I put this in here just because I wanted to give a moment for you all to chime in. And I can answer first, and then we'll see if anyone else has thoughts to add in. But I remember when I first started in my social work curriculum, we were talking about the child welfare system and reasons why children or families may enter the system. And I have a vivid memory of one of my professors, I think she asked for reasons why someone would enter the system. And as students were naming things left and right, she mentioned and made us all stop and reflect on this, that is the reason someone enters care in this specific situation because of a lack of resources that could be fixed if they were connected to something rather than removing the child from the home. Is that actually fixing any of the problems? And so, for instance, when we talk about families having access to food, is that something that could be mitigated with some of these programs and ensuring that families have access to them to help reunite families rather than it being a reason that there continues to be distance? And so I think that this overlaps extensively because we know that the state of the refrigerator or whether or not a child is receiving adequate healthcare could be a part of a number of reasons that a child could be removed from home. And so I'm just curious if you all think of anything else as to how these programs may relate to our work as CASA volunteers.
So is it Anna Grace?
Hi, Jennifer. Yes, Anna Grace.
So you've kind of mentioned sort of the practical notion of if your refrigerator is empty, that could be a problem and get you into the system. But I think all of these things, like if you're a low-income family or a single parent and you're worried about any of those things, I think you also might be prone to more mental instability and perhaps, other things that could, kind of promote bad behavior and get you reported. So I think that it's very kind of holistic. I think people just think of whether you're hungry or not, but not having money, not having the ability to make your monthly budget work creates an incredible level of stress that I think leads to people making bad decisions or rush decisions. And so I would say that impacts all of our cases probably.
Totally. Good thought, Jennifer. Thanks.
I always think about Maslow's hierarchy of need. And I mean, I think it's really difficult if your basic needs aren't met to use your executive functioning and maybe, have the luxury of attending to things just with your full focus and your full capacity. So I see that it does impact a lot of the cases on my caseload.
And I appreciate both of you chiming in. The other thing that I would add to this as well, as you all experience, and I experience too, sometimes government agencies don't work exactly the way that they're supposed to, and that it also is the same for the state agencies that run SNAP, WIC, and Medicaid. And so I think as CASA volunteers, hopefully if you identify that the family needs access to one of these resources, whether it's the biological family or the foster child, you can refer them to TJC to hopefully help meet some of those. Because it may be something that the DCS caseworker, it's just yet another thing on their list, and them also trying to navigate the program could be difficult. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of briefly walk us through the WIC program, the SNAP program, and then TennCare. And we'll talk about them kind of broadly and then specific to how they can serve foster families. So you all may be aware, but WIC stands for the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. The benefit that it is most known for is food benefits. But it specifically targets pregnant and postpartum people and then infants and children until they turn age 5. As soon as they turn 5, they're no longer eligible for WIC. But you receive a WIC EBT card where you can purchase like a very specific list of products. And those products are designed to hopefully target the growth and development of pregnant mom and the young child. But if you talk to WIC staff, they're not going to stop naming the benefits there, because if they were just talking about the food package, well, maybe we would just be talking about the SNAP program. And it's really important that we distinguish that WIC is not just a food benefit program. They also provide more holistic services. And so they provide families nutrition education and counseling, breastfeeding education and support, and then they can also be a connector to other health and social services depending on what the family's needs may be. Obviously, like, participants can decide whether or not they really want to opt into those services, but I have a lot of clients especially that really appreciate the breastfeeding education and support. Families can receive like breastfeeding materials, pumps, and not only do they have like IBCLCs and people that are certified to provide breastfeeding education, they also have peer breastfeeding counselors who are really just moms that have breastfed before and then therefore can provide some guidance to families that are just starting that out. And this you may say, Anna Grace, this is too much information about WIC, and so I can shut up and move on, but there are 4 different pieces of eligibility for WIC. And so I'm just going to briefly walk through those because I think this is where we can get into foster parents. But the first piece of WIC eligibility is, are you the women or the woman, the infant, and the child, or the caveat provided to that? So like I mentioned, you have to be pregnant or postpartum, an infant, or a child until they turn age 5. But the caveat here is that you could be a primary caregiver and have a child under 5 in your care. You don't have to be the biological mom in order to receive the WIC benefits. And so if you are a relative caregiver, if you're a single father, if you're in a homosexual couple and you're not the birth parents of the child, or you're a foster parent, you could be receiving WIC benefits on behalf of the child in your care. The other thing that's really big about WIC, and something that, depending on the state of the affairs, we scream from the rooftops or try to keep our mouths shut about it so people don't remember that this is the thing and then therefore try to attack it. But WIC is one of the few safety net programs that does not require any sort of immigration or citizenship status to participate. And so fortunately, our country has decided for the WIC program specifically to target the health and needs of moms and babies, regardless of citizenship status. And so we really like to plug that because that's different than SNAP and Medicaid. Second is that you have to meet an income level. So this income limit is actually a little bit higher than other programs that we'll get into later, but it's 185% of the federal poverty line, which is about $57,700 for a family of 4. This income limit is actually going to go up at the end of June, beginning of July. And so that family of 4 income limit is going to adjust to like 59,000 something. But the other thing to note is that because this income limit is a little bit higher, if you participate in the safety net programs where the income limit is lower, you could use that participation in the program to show that you're income eligible for WIC. And so we spend a lot of time talking about a streamlined enrollment into WIC. And so if you have families that are, you know, already receiving TennCare or SNAP benefits, it can be a really easy avenue to get on WIC because they're already participating in a means tested government program. Thirdly, you have to live in the state of Tennessee in order to participate in Tennessee WIC. If you lived in another state, you would participate in their WIC. Sometimes if you have, you know, families across state lines that are moving, this can get a little bit more complicated and you need specific verification to prove that you are no longer participating in one state and starting to participate in others. But this is really supposed to be quite simple, just that you have to show that you live in the state of Tennessee. And then lastly, because WIC is a very targeted program, they also assess for nutritional risk. This would never be a reason someone would be denied from WIC. Just really a matter of understanding how the program has the potential to impact the family. Will it help them meet their daily servings of recommended fruits and vegetables? It will also, you know, try to understand if they have a history of poor health outcomes or what other family issues may be impacting their ability to eat nutritious foods. But so specifically with foster families' participation in WIC, what's really neat is that, like I mentioned at the beginning, you can be a primary caregiver or a non-biological parent and receive WIC on behalf of the child. What's also nice about WIC and different than some of the other programs is that the foster family's income is not calculated into this at all. The way that a foster child would qualify for WIC is that they are receiving Medicaid, and so they're automatically income eligible for WIC, and therefore the foster parent's household is not a factor in this. So you could have an affluent foster family and they could still receive WIC to help meet the needs of the child in their care, regardless of their income. And we find that it's helpful. I mean, WIC, in addition to providing, you know, eggs and milk and fresh fruits and vegetables, they also are widely known for their formula benefit, which is expensive no matter what your income is. And so that could be a reason to participate in the program if the foster family is having to provide formula for the family, for the child. But it is important to note that there's not any sort of automatic enrollment in WIC if you're participating in TennCare, and so the foster family will have to proceed like through the WIC enrollment process. And then lastly, what I want to mention is that pregnant and postpartum moms and the child can participate separately. And so if you or your family has a child in care that is like a little infant, the odds are high that that mom could also be participating in WIC, but just as a separate household, even if she's not in care of the young child. So postpartum moms are eligible for WIC for 6 months, just postpartum. If they're breastfeeding, they're eligible for the nutrition benefits of WIC for 1 year. And so mom could be receiving benefits as a postpartum mom, and baby could be receiving benefits too, even if they're in separate households. Any questions before I proceed to the next program? That was a lot of information.
I was a little bit confused about the risk page. It would buy pretty.
Yes.
I mean, when you say if somebody smokes and somebody, I mean, does that prohibit them from eligibility or what?
No, sorry, that was probably confusing. Basically, WIC advertises itself as a science-based and backed program that targets the health needs of pregnant, postpartum individuals and young children. And so in order to track some of the ways in which it has the potential to impact the participants, it tracks what the risks are to that individual's nutrition success, basically.
Oh, okay.
So these are some of the things that would be in that like initial screening tool that WIC would use when learning about the family and what their needs are.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Hey, Anna Grace, would that translate for like a minor mom? So say you had a minor mom and her infant, say they were both in care, maybe in different foster homes, they could both get WIC,
Yep,
but only
exactly.
for 6 months if she's not breastfeeding.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, cool. And I guess you may have already said this when I was getting stuff sorted, but because we're not allowed as CASA to provide like a referral, so we can't provide.
Really?
You would not be able to
Maybe I should have
provide.
learned that in my training.
Oh, no, no, no. It's there's so much to learn. But so like I couldn't give you like the mom's name, but I could give her your contact. So would
Yes.
you be the contact or is there
Mhm.
a contact? Okay. So at the end, we'll just make sure that's the best way is to either for us to connect you with their FSW or for us to give them your info if we feel like they could reach out to you on behalf of themselves.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Um, and this may help a little bit. Momentarily, I'll tell you how the WIC referral works, and you can see, Sarah, if that fits in with what CASA is allowed to do, or they would still need to just send them to me. But real quickly, depending on how in tune you may be with your family and how they may or may not be using the safety net programs, one of the things that in some ways is helpful and in some ways is really difficult about the WIC program is that it's almost like a prescription of food that you can purchase rather than like, you get $200 a month. And so you get a list of products that you can purchase, and that list of products changes somewhat depending on if you are a pregnant mom or an infant or a 3-year-old. And so you may see a product as labeled WIC in the store, but that may not mean that it's eligible, like that it's your WIC product that you're eligible for. For example, there's lots of confusion around milk. So like a young child may be eligible for the whole milk and the mom may be eligible for the 1% milk or something like that. And so it gets confusing. And if you hear people talk about WIC, you probably hear them complain about the shopping experience and finding products that are right with their package and WIC approved. It can be confusing. What's positive about WIC is that because it's a like specific list of products that you can purchase, ultimately, if eggs, inflation is high or bird flu is out there, and eggs are $8 a dozen, you can purchase that dozen of eggs because it's in your WIC food package, regardless of the price. And so we do see that, with rising cost of groceries, that families still being able to purchase their WIC approved products, regardless of the price, is helpful. The only caveat to the like prescription based food package is that families receive a cash value benefit, and that's a monetary amount added onto their package where they can purchase fresh or frozen fruits and vegetables. And so for young children, that's $26. For pregnant and postpartum families, that's between $47 and $52 a month. So it's a pretty sizable cash value benefit for fruits and vegetables, something that we're really excited about and something that the current Congress has proposed to cut. So if you're looking to find something else to advocate for, you can add the WIC food package to your list. Okay. Real quickly, as far as connecting families to WIC goes, this is a really easy way to do it, except that you need access to a fax machine, so that may be difficult. But I will send these slides out afterwards, Sarah, and you can forward them to the group. But if this is problematic and sending this to a WIC clinic would be too difficult or not in the bounds of what CASA could do, you can either send them to me if you think that they could use support getting enrolled in WIC, or you can just point them to this link here where they can contact their local WIC office. Each county has at least one WIC office, and some of the metro counties have more than one. Sorry, Sarah, I saw you unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, sorry. So I would just say that depending on how well you think your mother could advocate for herself, either connect her directly with Anna Grace or send the link or provide the info to the FSW, but we would not be able to fill this information out, unfortunately.
Okay, sure. Well, that is good to know. But you can, like I mentioned, this is a link to every single WIC county, the contact information, address, fax number, all of that stuff. So that's a good place to start if you feel like the mom wouldn't have any trouble contacting WIC on her own. If she would like some extra support, I'm happy to help. We also have some flyers here, if that ever feels relevant to share with a mom that maybe has questions about WIC or is unsure about if they like are interested in connecting. They're linked here and you can find them on our website as well. And then this is not really as relevant because you all won't be like sending the referrals, but if you just hear from families that are either having trouble finding the products in the grocery store or getting a hold of the WIC office, those are all reasons that someone could be connected with us. So just know if there are barriers to WIC, then you can point them to me. Okay, next I'm going to briefly touch on the SNAP program. I spoke most extensively about WIC because I think it is like the program that overlaps the best with the work that we do at CASA and is the most accessible for foster families and biological parents too. SNAP and TennCare are a little bit less so, but especially SNAP. And so SNAP stands for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. You may be more familiar with it as food stamps. And similar to the WIC program, it provides an EBT card where you can purchase food at grocery stores and some farmers markets. Basically, you can purchase almost all products in the grocery store except for hot and prepared meals and obviously like cigarettes, alcohol, things like that. But this program has been around longer than the WIC program and is really the nation's like first line of defense for hunger. It is also significantly more complicated determining eligibility. In addition to just like your income, WIC, you can show them a few paid stubs and call it a day. This, you show them your income, your net income, your gross income, you calculate assets. There's a specific asset calculator, whereas like if you have too much money in savings or a really expensive car and fall on hard times, you wouldn't qualify for WIC, or sorry, for SNAP. And then on the flip side, there are also other things that can like increase your amounts that you receive per month. And that would be qualifying expenses. And so anyways, I'm just going to briefly touch on a couple of things because it gets really confusing. What's most important here about household size is that, once again, SNAP is all about the number of people who are buying groceries together in one house. They don't have to be related. But that does mean that if a foster family was going to receive SNAP, they would themselves, the whole household, have to be income eligible. Whereas with WIC, you can use that Medicaid enrollment to show that the child is eligible for the WIC program. That's not the same with SNAP. And so there's no like predetermined eligibility for foster families or foster children to be eligible for the SNAP program. It's all about the household size. And so I'll continue on, but remember that. This is a little bit about the income. You can see here that it's 130% of the federal poverty line, whereas WIC is 185. So it also catches a lot more families too. So if you encounter foster families or maybe the biological parents who say, yeah, well, we're not eligible for SNAP, there's a good chance that they might be eligible for WIC, but that's only because the income limit is a little bit higher. So remind people of that. And yeah, I mean, you can see here that there's, the gross income level and the net income level. So it does get more complicated. These are some examples of qualifying expenses. Say you have a family with a lot of medical expenses or child support payments. Those are things that you can tell the SNAP office about and may increase the amount of benefit that you get to receive each month. And then over here, you can see, this is the part that I think is particularly frustrating, is the asset calculator. And if a household, like period end of sentence, meets all of the other eligibility requirements, but has over $3,000 in liquidatable, whatever word that would be, assets, then they will not qualify for SNAP. And if it's an older household or has a member that is disabled, that's a $4,500 limit. So, we won't get into this, but just, you should know that, you have to be a citizen or a qualified immigrant to participate in SNAP, whereas WIC doesn't talk about citizenship at all, only that there's a lack of that requirement. SNAP, there definitely is, and so, you get a lot of families that, maybe the children are citizens and the parents are undocumented, that could apply as what you see here, a mixed eligibility household, but ultimately may be intimidated to do so because they know that for this program, there is a citizenship requirement, and they get scared about filling out paperwork where they have to say that they're undocumented or leave out the information like a social security number that would show they were documented. So I won't spend much time on this because it's too complicated. Okay, so what's most important here is that foster children can only be eligible for SNAP if their whole foster household is eligible for SNAP. Like I mentioned earlier, they cannot apply as just like a single individual. It's gonna be calculated for that whole household. The one way where it's adjusted, I guess, for the foster child is that it, like, having one extra body in the household increases that household size, and then therefore the income limit goes slightly up. And so if it's a family of 3 who is caring for 2 children, their household, of 5 would mean that their, income level could increase a little bit and they would still be eligible. So I'm not sure if that makes sense, but moral of the story here is that there's no like special certification given to foster children or foster families because they're caring for a foster child, unfortunately. Okay. The SNAP program, as evidenced by the first few slides, I think is much more complicated than the WIC program. And so the link here is the state's SNAP outreach partners. Oftentimes these people work at food banks and could help families fill out applications. The difference in what TJC does and what a SNAP outreach partner does is that we don't really help with the initial application for SNAP. We more so help after an application has been submitted and maybe you were wrongfully denied or erroneously terminated, or your benefit amount was adjusted or in a way that doesn't make sense with the case. That's when TJC would step in and help with the situation, not necessarily for those initial applications. The caveat there is that if you like walk into our building, we'll help you submit an application right there, but generally our caseworkers are like doing more elevated casework issues. And so I will also be sure to provide you all the number to call if you have a client or family that has questions about the SNAP application process and is having trouble receiving their benefits. And then lastly, is to talk about health insurance. So TJC does work with TennCare Medicaid, Cover Kids, and Choices. Cover Kids is an insurance program for pregnant moms and young children, and it's actually a program that doesn't require citizenship status, and so that's what our immigrant families are oftentimes participating in, but it only covers mom while she's pregnant and then like 60 days after she gives birth. And then Choices is health insurance for older adults with disabilities. But yes.
Real question. So does Cover Kids covers mom while she's pregnant for undocumented, but not the kids?
Well, so it gets confusing, and I'm not as much of an expert on all things Medicaid as I am the nutrition safety net programs. But once, if mom is pregnant as she's undocumented, but then has a US citizen child, and then that child can just participate in TennCare Medicaid. And so I believe there's some overlap between like Cover Kids covers like the first year or something of the child, and they transition to TennCare Medicaid, but The problem is not so much the child because they're going to be a US citizen, it's really mom. But you know, the government has recognized that we want moms, even who aren't citizens, to give birth to healthy babies who will be citizens. And so Cover Kids is really just meant mostly for the pregnant, undocumented mom.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I was thinking about more like when we have maybe teens or something like that that aren't TennCare eligible, it wouldn't cover them. If they like, do you know what I
That
mean?
weren't undocumented.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
cool.
Yeah,
All right,
it's just for
thanks.
pregnant. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you can briefly see here that, once again, the eligibility is more complicated. There's a citizenship requirement for TennCare Medicaid. You have to obviously do the resource, tests and income verifications much more similarly to SNAP, than to WIC. And ultimately, what's most exciting about TennCare is, unlike SNAP, foster children are eligible for TennCare Medicaid because they're in the custody of the state and they can be like a child only case. Whereas SNAP, you still have to apply as the whole household. That's not the case for TennCare. And so ultimately, all children, at least in TJC's experience, should be enrolled in TennCare Medicaid when they enter the custody of the state. We've only had a few cases where that hasn't happened seamlessly, but usually that is what happens. And so once again, like WIC, the foster family's income would not be factored into the calculation of whether or not the child is eligible. It's really just that they are a foster child and then are eligible for TennCare Medicaid. It doesn't like qualify anyone else in the foster care household. It really is just those child only cases for families or for children that are in foster care. And I don't really know how that would impact biological families because sometimes adults are qualified based on having a child who's eligible for TennCare. So now that I'm thinking about that, that would have been a helpful slide to include as well, but I'm not sure about the answer to that. So just talking about the foster child here and that they are eligible for TennCare Medicaid. But that's mostly it for the information. I'm sorry that that was kind of a dump, but hopefully that's helpful. If you take away anything from this presentation, hopefully you remember that there are caveats to the safety net that could allow your foster children or the biological parents to continue participating even when their like, you know, permanent house or placement is interrupted, and that the Tennessee Justice Center is a resource to help navigate some of that. So that's the summary.
Thanks. That was really digestible. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, I thought that was it's just super helpful information. It impacts so many of our cases. So I love that we have like an expert in our
Well,
midst. Do y'all
I'm
have
an
any?
expert on some things, not on others.
Yeah, do y'all have any like questions that might, without, providing too much detail that would impact your cases or anything?
I have a question.
Okay.
Are there any kind of emergency safety net? I had a case that I was working with several years ago. The mother had lost custody of 5 children, including 2 boys who were teenagers. And she had worked very, very hard to get custody, and she was very, very close. So all 5 of them were on a trial home visit for a long weekend. And she called me and she just said, Paula, I don't have food for them. And of course, her food stamps, her SNAP benefits were only for her because she didn't have custody of them. And, you know, fortunately, I was working as a volunteer also in a community center that had safety harvest had food available. And I called the woman in charge and she said, I'm not letting this family go hungry over the weekend. So we were able to get her. But if I hadn't known that, I mean, are there any emergency things for cases like that?
Unfortunately, I would have done exactly what you did and connect them to the local food bank or a pantry in the area. Because the short answer is no. Because those children were not in her custody, her SNAP benefits would not be adjusted so that she could purchase food for them.
Thank,
Yeah, and Grace, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Paula.
thank you. I was afraid that was the answer, but I guess the other thing for us is to make sure we know where those Second Harvest food pantries are. And when
Yeah,
they're
that's
open.
true. I don't have that information off the top of my head by any means, but I know that they have like a pantry locator on Second Harvest's website.
So that brings me to two questions. One would be, when we have kiddos that are on a trial home visit and say they complete it successfully, how long would it take realistically to get those SNAP or WIC benefits transitioned over to mom? Or get,
I would say for WIC, I don't think it would take very long just because I think the office is, in my experience, more responsive. For SNAP, uh, typically their processing time is 30 days. There are some situations, like if someone is unhoused or has a certain disability, where it could be an expedited review, but in this case, I don't think it would be expedited. And so my guess is that it would probably take close to 30 days to get that changed. But that's a really good question that I hadn't thought about for those. I mean, obviously the biological mom would then be responsible for feeding the children during those 30 days. And if she is using food stamps, then it would be nice if that was adjusted for the whole family.
I have a quick question, just like from a social justice perspective. If a
Sure.
biological parent is granted visitation, and you're saying that because they're not technically in her custody, why wouldn't the state be responsible for feeding those children during a home visit? I mean, if the state is somehow getting benefits on their behalf or someone else's, like why would a biological parent be caught out like that if the child is receiving benefits under another program, and or if technically there's another entity that actually has custody of them?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had an answer to that. I think this is a really, really good question.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting talking about the SNAP program because obviously it is a response to hunger that is supposed to be responsive to everyone. But as you know, there's a gazillion caveats that you can think of in which the program is not responsive. And I think this is a prime example that I've never thought about before. When you think about kids that are moving to different placements, and maybe it's still within foster care, or maybe it's back and forth between their foster care placement and, you know, hopeful reunification. And so they're having prolonged visitation with mom or dad. That the safety net that ideally would help reunify the family doesn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Adjust quick enough in order to be able to actually help do that.
Yeah, it just feels like a barrier that's, I mean, like it's going to be really very hard for people who are living on the edge of poverty to surmount it ever, let alone quickly. Just curious.
Yeah.
Grace, is the WIC, so I'm just thinking about how like a foster parent could have a WIC, is it a card or,
Yep.
so theoretically, a foster parent may have a WIC card for Johnny and Johnny goes on a trial home visit. They could then pass that with him
Yes.
to the caregiver.
Yeah, you have a PIN that you use with a WIC card, almost just like a debit card, and so the foster parent could theoretically share the WIC card and the PIN with the family.
So I guess one question is like, what does DCS do when that trial home visit is initiated? Like, what provisions are in place, and are they asking about things like those transfers?
Well, and also
I mean,
there are like that foster mom be have WIC for multiple children or for themselves? How do you delineate? Because I bet you all the funds are just loaded to one card and not, here's one for John, here's one for Bobby or whatever. So that
Totally.
quickly.
Yeah, y'all are bringing up great questions and points. I'm going to ask around. I don't know the answers. I don't know if there is an answer, but I will definitely ask that question because I have a kiddo right now on a trial home visit, and especially because it's the summertime and he's
Oh,
a
yeah.
teenage boy, and mom is like, I can't keep him fed. Um, and so I'm thinking about that specifically, but
Mhm. Yeah, I'll ask my boss about this too, to see if maybe she knows something about the SNAP program that I don't, that in these situations would allow benefits to be adjusted for mom to adequately feed kids theoretically while they're in her care.
And I have another quick question. Um, when children age out, when young adults age out at 18 and they're going to be out on their own, are they eligible for SNAP benefits? And do we help them get that in some way? Because they may not know about that.
I mean, I don't know if TJC has ever had a client like that. We may have, but yes. Kids aging out of foster care are eligible to continue SNAP. I don't remember the number of years off the top of my head, but they are eligible. And I think that even falls into the category of expedited review, where like you could get connected to benefits theoretically in 7 days instead of the 30 days.
That's great to know.
Um, well, there's a few slides at the end here that are just like our contact information and some resources if you're suddenly very interested in the safety net programs and want to do some more reading. But we host several like working groups each month that if you like want to stay informed and maybe don't even attend the calls, but want to receive like the email updates about the different safety net programs and what's happening with them, you're more than welcome to join us. But yeah, that's mostly it. Here's our contact information, and I'm a resource, so feel free to use me if you have questions or if you have families that could use help getting connected to any of these programs. We're happy to help.
thank you so much. I think this is like awesome information. So I will be sure to share this recording with the other team leads. And then if you want to send me the slides, I'll make sure that
Okay.
we can get them out to all the advocates.
Fabulous.
So I'm excited that we have you.
Me too.
So,
Thanks so much.
all right. Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah,
Have a good
thanks.
afternoon. All right. Bye.
Bye.